Hola, hola. Max Cisneros here. I want to welcome everybody. Welcome to No Pride in Detention. As I mentioned, my name is Max Cisneros. I use pronouns he, him, his, and I am the Latinx Program Officer for the New Haven Pride Center in New Haven, Connecticut. And gives me great joy to be able to have this event with a partnership together with FAMILIA, Trans Queer Liberation Movement. And this is a program centered around being able to understand the End Trans Detention campaign and what that means in this moment in time right now. But before we begin, I'd like to take this moment to acknowledge the land on which we are hosting this event. The New Haven Pride Center was founded and operates on the traditional lands of the Mohegan, Mashapequot, Eastern Pequot, Scotticoke, Golden Hill, Pagasoket, Niantic, and Quinnipiac people. These are tribes that spoke the language or derivative language of the Algonquin tongue. Wherever you are, we hope that you take a moment to acknowledge the lands on which that we occupy, the lands on which we love, the lands on which that we live and we work and organize. And to find out more about these native lands, please visit native-land.ca. Now, to begin, I am excited and it gives me great joy and, dare I say, pride to introduce Janicet Gutierrez. Janicet Gutierrez is a fearless fighter. She has been here in New Haven on a few occasions. But to give her, bio, she works at Familia Trans Queer Liberation Movement. She's a community organizer and advocate, and she is a transgender Latina organizer from Mexico who was born in Taxpan, Jalisco. Did I say that right? Taxpan?
Tuxpan.
Tuxpan, there we go. Thank you. I was born in Mexico, I swear. She is an organizer with Familia Trans Queer Liberation Movement. Janicet believes in the importance of uplifting and centering the voices of trans women of color in all racial justice work. Janicet will continue to organize in order to end the deportation, incarceration, and criminalization of immigrants and all people of color. She currently lives in Arizona ahora. I'm going to let you take this away, but I just once again wanted to thank you for being able to provide this for our communities out here and for the tireless work that you've been doing out there on the West Coast. And we're just so happy to be able to host this here on the East Coast. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Johnny Sit. Take it away.
Of course. Thank you, Max, for having me. Appreciate the support. Thank you, New Heaven Pride Center, for having this event. As many as you know, Pride Month is in full gear. There's a lot of conversations going around, um, and I see people really bringing back what Pride is about, right? Pride was initially a revolt against the police violence and law enforcement in general. So, for us, um, yes, in case people don't know who I am, Jenny Gutierrez, pronoun she, her, ella. I am a national community organizer at Familia Trans Queer Liberation Movement. So we're a national LGBTQ Latinx organization working for the liberation of our communities. And like I was saying, the work that we're doing is specifically with the entrance detention campaign that we have going now. It's not a campaign that just started, right? Like, oh, let's make this happen. It's work that's been going on for the last probably years, maybe over 10 years, and how entrance detention campaign it's what it is now. It's part of the hard work, it's part of the advocacy that a lot of undocumented trans and queer people have been doing over the years. There was a major in the campaign that took place at the immigrants' rights movement, the No One More campaign, that pretty much was a response to the tremendous deportations that were taking place under the Obama administration during the time that he was in office for 8 years. So there was a lot of mobilization of community across the country, raising their voices and challenging, right, the deportation machine. And among those people were undocumented trans and queer folks. So our people will, join in solidarity with the No One More campaign. Many of us traveled to Phoenix, Arizona, which was sort of like the epicenter of this major backlash against our community, especially undocumented immigrant communities, through legislation that were targeting us. And, our people were showing up, raising their voices. We'll bring our flags with us, the rainbow flags, the trans flags, and we will say we're part of this struggle and we're fighting to end deportations. We want our people to also be heard and what conditions they're under in detention, the abuses that are taking place. So that campaign, took place years ago, and that's sort of like connected to the entrance detention campaign. We do have, we just launched on June 1st as Pride Month kicked off. We launched the entrance detention campaign that people can go into. It is www.entrancedetention.org. I believe you shared the link on the event page so people can look at some sort of brief timeline of the work that has been done over the years, putting more emphasis on undocumented LGBTQ folks, especially transgender women. And that work has not been easy. Obviously, we could not put everything on the website, but it does provide important information of what the campaign, the work that the campaign has done with the support of local organizations, the leadership of trans immigrant women, and all the hard advocacy that has been done in different parts of the country. Part of the work that we have done when Familia was initiated, there was an urgency to talk about this issue, right? Undocumented LGBTQ folks in detention center. People started to hear about the horrible experiences and treatment that immigrants, our people were facing at the hands of, ICE in these facilities. So Familia had a direct action in Santa Ana in 2014, where five people put their bodies on the line and just challenging, right, the mainstream immigrant rights movement, challenging the mainstream LGBTQ rights movement that we are here in this country, we're part of the community, and we're also being, we're facing harsh conditions inside these facilities. So that action was very significant in May 2014. In May 2015, a year later, there was another action that took place in Santa Ana. And why Santa Ana? Because community learned that the police department in Santa Ana, California, which is located in Orange County, which is close to Disneyland, right? One of the happiest places on earth, that all these abuses and injustices were taking place in the backyard. And the police department created what they called the LGBTQ pod, that Immigration Customs Enforcement, which is ICE, enter a contract with the city of Santa Ana to provide money to arrest our people. And the action was a reminder that we are not going to stay silent and we want ICE out of Santa Ana. There was another campaign that was happening at the time, ICE out of California, ICE out of Santa Ana. And again, our people were part of the work where people were showing up and protesting and demanding, right, the end of deportation, the end of detention for all our people. And so that other action in 2015 was also important. Five people, trans and queer folks, put their bodies on the line. So all this work has taken place over the years. There's been various actions that have taken place. And part of those actions were a response because as we started to lift this issue up, then we found out like unfortunate cases of trans immigrant women that were murdered under, ICE custody because of lack of medical attention and the mistreatment that they received, the abuses, right, that are inhumane, verbal, physical, and mental are, it's this agency, it's what it does. It just creates, a lot of violence for our people. So then we learn about the case of, Victoria Arellano first in 2007, who died in ICE custody. She was a trans immigrant woman from Mexico living with HIV. And while in custody, she was taken to the hospital and was handcuffed on the hospital bed, and she lost her life. Right? Years later, in 2018, we learned about Roxana Hernandez, a trans immigrant woman from Honduras with similar circumstances. She was living with HIV, was seeking protection in this country, and she was moved to different facilities. And when she got really ill, immigration took her to the hospital. And by that time, it was too late, and she got in ICE custody. Then we hear about, Joanna Medina, trans immigrant woman from Guatemala, young, in her 20s, and also living with HIV. And again, ICE didn't do its job in protecting her or providing the medical care that she needed. And on June 1st, 2019, which was the first day of Pride last 2 years ago, she died in ICE, while she was in custody. And ICE might say we released her, but she knew her condition. So we're still holding them accountable for her death, so that work has been, happening with the campaign. Our community has mobilized, has come together in different parts of the country to have, rallies, to have vigils, to say we are not going to stop until we end trans detention. And we are honoring the lives of Victoria Arellano. We're honoring the lives of Roxana Hernandez and Joanna Medina, right? So the community came together and was able to um, demonstrate across the country the power and the voice that we have. So the Entrance Detention campaign, in addition to all the advocacy, all the organizing that has been, done over the years, will also have key collaborations with other organizations. For example, Black LGBTQ plus migrant project, transgender law center, Mi Gente now, among other groups that believe that our people shouldn't be detained in the first place, right? So there's a whole of, a very long history of work that has been happening around the entrance detention campaign. We have been able to do regional gatherings as part of Familia to build our base, to build community power. So we have been able to go to the East Coast. One of the first gatherings that we did was in Boston. That's where I met a lot of people from Connecticut, like Richard, who's part of the community, and other folks that went from Connecticut. And I also have traveled back a few times since then and to connect with local groups, to speak at the university around issues pertaining to undocumented LGBTQ folks, in particular transgender women. So it's a lot of work, and again, I invite people to learn about the campaign through the website, to follow the work of, Familia TQLF on all social media outlets, to learn more, to get involved, to make a difference, right? And put pressure to this administration that now it's positioning itself, right? The Biden administration as a friendly LGBTQ, um, that they're friendly to us and things like that. But like, you can be friendly while you're still detaining our people and facing all this. Our people face all these abuses, and in other ways to plug in is to learn about BLMP, LGBTQ plus migrant project, transgender law center. So there's way for people to learn about and what can they do to help us, right? Put pressure on this administration, specifically during the month of Pride. Again, honoring the roots of our fight and how Marsha P. Johnson, a Black trans woman, was able to resist like state violence, Sylvia Rivera, among so many other people that oftentimes are silenced or not really prioritized in the struggle for our liberation. So, with all that said, there's a lot of things that will come up in the next, like, we started Prime Month in Phoenix with a rally that took place here to highlight the campaign, to make the demands very clear about ending trans detention, releasing our trans people currently in detention, to release people living with HIV and any medical conditions, because it's clear that ICE doesn't have the capacity or don't really care about the well-being of our people. So we since then have been having various events in different cities like New York City um, and Atlanta, among other, right? So now we have more events coming up. And next week, we're going to be traveling to DC to have a major rally and and raise awareness to this campaign and put pressure to the administration. Like, if you're really, the statements that you have been saying, they sound very nice, but we need action. And that action is for you to end trans detention, for you to release our people living with HIV and any medical condition that they can't be, detained, not even for one day, that our community is organizing, and community alternative solutions is what is needed, right? That there's a lot of different organizations, different groups that are providing services for people who were previously detained, and can guide them and support them in reintegrating into society, and having opportunities to survive and thrive, and not become a statistics of being murdered by the state, or face violence, um, in society at large. So there's a lot of information, Max, but I don't want to keep just talking and talking and talking, but also please do, ask questions, or if anybody watching has any questions, I'll be more than happy
Thank you
to
so
answer.
much. Dar esa historia. I think part of what's happening also is there's a raging debate, and that's going on around June, around Pride Month, about the differences between gay pride and queer liberation. And I think it's a very fascinating debate to be having right now. And that's why, to me, the End Trans Detention campaign is so significant for not just for the purposes of this debate, but also to have a better understanding of the intersectionality of what end trans detention means. End trans detention really does kind of like get to many different struggles finding themselves in one place, and that's what's really kind of like healing to see many different communities coming together for one end, understanding that it has to do with the liberation of all of us. Entonces, una cosa de que quería preguntar a little bit more about, to ask you, and yes, if anybody else has questions, please feel free to provide it in the live stream at the YouTube page over at the New Haven Pride Center, and of course on the Facebook comments. We'll make sure to relay that. Pero aparte de eso, my question is, um, we didn't know too much when Victoria Arellano, when Victoria Arellano died in 2007 under the Obama administration. Not too much was known, details as far as how many folks were being incarcerated, detained, how many folks were being deported around that time. Not too much details came about in that time, but much, and I think a lot of it is thanks to folks like Familia, folks like Mi Gente, folks like organizations that were pushing to understand more about what was happening in the background, really, and then provide that information for organizations to be able to disseminate and create campaigns that, like Not One More, like Eyes on Ice, like End Trans Detention. Entonces, my question is, in what ways do you think, what sort of movements, what sort of campaigns that are happening right now that have been kind of like resurgently happening in the last year do you think are appropriate for us to be able to get together with to understand how we can together liberate our communities, liberate our Black and Brown communities, liberate our queer folks? What other organizations or movements do you see happening now that can get together with the End Trans Detention campaign or the folks working in it to be able to get to liberation?
Yeah, yeah, that's very important. I think forming solidarity and alliances with other groups is key to really dismantle, right, white supremacy, to challenge oppression, and to end the abuses that happened while people are in custody, whether in a detention center, whether in prison, or any agency that creates harm to our communities, right? And also, you made a point earlier about, what pride is about. Um, I see a lot of people really elevating their voices about how Pride was started, and to see the names of Marsha P. Johnson, to see the names of Sylvia Rivera, among, again, so many other people that were part of, Stonewall in 1969. And before that, right, there were other sort of riots that took place in California, and people are forgetting that our like homosexuality, gender identity, and expression were criminalized, that people were literally arrested for engaging in sex, for challenging the gender norms. So people think that, oh, we always had it so easy, and now we have marriage equality. So to that, it's like, I see a lot of people that want to forget about that, or erase that, moving more into upholding, right, oppression. They're moving more into upholding white supremacy by not acknowledging how much hard work has been done uh, to get to where we are, and how much more fight we have to do. So those people that don't want to acknowledge that, to me, they're very, like, moving in the wrong direction of assimilation, right? They're moving in the wrong direction of respectability politics, because none of those things are ever going to truly liberate our people. Like, when you do take a very critical and radical uh, stand in issues that are impacting our community. And that, to me, the End Trans Detention campaign is the work that it's doing, right? It's the liberation work, that we are saving lives, that we are releasing people from torture in custody. And I think those points that you brought up are so, fundamental to understand where we have been, to where we are, and what it is that we need to do to fully achieve liberation, not just for some, but for all of us, right? Like, it's been echo over the years as our resistance grows and our power increases as well. So to that, I also feel that, like, the orgs that you mentioned have been, instrumental, and the campaigns that have happened to move us in that direction of liberation work and forming alliances with local groups. When we were in Santa Ana, all that we achieved, including the closing of the LGBTQ pod, was possible because of other groups that were fighting against ICE, and they saw that our people, being oppressed, being unjustly detained, was also part of the struggle, right? So now we have seen over the last few years also, Max, the major movement of Black folks across the country and around the world, through the Black Lives Matter and standing strongly against law enforcement, police brutality, and the defund the demand to defund the police has gained major support in a very mainstream level. So I'm hoping that with the work that we're doing in the long term, we're also move beyond, right? That we do win an entrance attention, but also move into the bigger issues that are LGBTQ plus immigrant community is facing in this country and around the world. That in maybe 10 years, we have a massive movement of people raising their voices. And to me, forming alliances with the Black struggle is very, very crucial for us to dismantle, violence, to dismantle white supremacy, and end oppression. We also have to look at our Muslim community in this country and how they have been treated over the years, right? And all the unjust laws that were passed under the federal government that further criminalized them. And we saw under the Trump administration the no, the ban against Muslim countries, painting a horrible image of the community and targeting, right, our people. So then we also need to look at the Asian community with the current attacks against,
Mhm.
Asian folks. So I think there's a lot of groups, and I that have reached out to us, that we have collaborated, and not everything has to be like visible, not everything has to be mentioned, right? But our efforts is to to be able to join in solidarity with other struggles, right? And people taking risk, and people really know falling for the status quo, and some people believe that because we do have marriage equality, that that's it, right? Like
That's it.
there's nothing more to fight about. But like in reality, there's a lot more to fight. And we are seeing now, specifically with the trans youth, um, last Sunday we saw the major rally in Brooklyn, right? The second march for Black trans liberation, and this time they emphasize in the trans youth, because of all the attacks that are happening to the community, how they want to legislate and criminalize trans youth by denying access to healthcare, by denying access to play sports and things like that, right? So first we were the target of bathrooms, like trans people can and should not use bathrooms. So now we're seeing these attacks even moving more, right? And becoming more visible at the state level in many states. So people, we need the youth, we need them to organize, we need them to mobilize, and they can join in the organization that speaks to them, right? That speaks to their values and the goal that we want to achieve, and making sure our communities are safe, making sure like we don't have any more cases of people dying in ICE custody, that we don't have more Black people dying in, and being recorded on film, that we don't see, Asian folks being, brutally attacked on the streets. So that to me, it's if you are silent on those things and don't align with those struggles, it's like you are about assimilation and respectability politics, and that's not the solution. The solution is to fight and take a strong stand, right? We have
Right.
been able to, Familia has been able to, share space with other amazing radical organizations like BYP 100 in Chicago, and among so many others. And we will continue to move in that direction. And we'll see where this campaign goes and what is the other issues that we need to prioritize in the coming years.
If you allow me, I'm going to be a little nostalgic for a moment and provide a little personal history de
Yes.
que el año pasado, the first program that I was able to organize after the pandemic was a conversation about COVID in the Latinx community. Y fue esa misma semana de que FAMILIA, Trans Queer Liberation Movement, declaró esa semana Trans Immigrant Week.
Mhm.
We had that same program that week. That was also the week that the George Floyd
Mhm.
that the uproar due to the George Floyd killing murder happened that same week, and we wanted to cover so much in that program, and we didn't even get to the resurgence of Black Lives Matter. But that just gives you a little bit of a history of how far we've come from the año pasado to right now, and
Mhm.
how much change has been generated in that time. Things that seemed impossible in esos días, in esos momentos, now actually you're seeing more organizations push for things that once seemed impossible. And to fast forward into this week, into the last few days,
Mhm.
um, I dos incidentes en particular, two things that happened in particular that made me feel we're very connected. And to mention them while we're talking about the End Trans Detention campaign is so vital. I think that the two incidents were, one of them was an assassination, two assassinations that happened in Guatemala, one of whom was Andrea Gonzalez, who was a trans leader, a woman leader in a trans organization, in the leading trans organization in Guatemala, and she was murdered. A 28-year-old trans leader was murdered. And then in that same breath, in that same news cycle, we're seeing the Vice President Kamala Harris show up in Guatemala and say the words to many immigrants who are, thinking about taking the journey, the dangerous journey. Do not come. She said, "Do not come." Right, almost as if totally discounting and invalidating the dangers that immigrants, trans, queer immigrants are dealing with in their own home countries, exemplified by the assassination of Andrea Gonzalez. And so, what I mean to say by all this is that all of these incidents have a place in this campaign. All these incidents have a way to understand our place in this moment. Entonces, I just wanted to mention how we were able to get to this place here, considering what we were talking about a year ago, and there was no time to talk about Black Lives Matter in that 1 hour, and now here we are, now a year later, and talking about end trans detention. And the
Mhm.
reason why Black Lives Matter, I think, is so vital to understand a little bit about how end trans detention can be impactful for the queer community is because one of the things that I adore about Black Lives Matter is that you take the most exploited, the most oppressed, you look at the most marginalized communities, and you liberate them, and it makes it easier to understand how the rest of the community can reach liberation. So, by end trans detention, if we're looking at all the immigrants, if we're looking at the upwards of 11 million immigrants that are in this country, and then we're looking at the most marginalized, the most exploited, the most commodified, the most oppressed individuals in the immigrant community, I think that you would don't have to look too far than the trans community of color. The ones especially are in detention because those are the ones that are dying. They're the ones that are being murdered in detention. And so that's one parallel that I've thought about when it comes to Black Lives Matter and campaigns like the End Trans Detention campaign. Entonces, my question is this. It's taking a while to get to it, but I'd like to understand a little bit more about how we can help, how the end trans detention can help folks understand our space now, how they could look at the news, how they could look at these statements from politicians and put them in a certain place. Going to the End Trans Detention website is incredibly useful to understand their basic details about the campaign, dates, names, understandings of demands, and all that. But when we're talking about gay pride, what are the ways that folks can better understand how they can celebrate, really affirm gay pride, the way we choose to see it, in this time when we're asking them to also push for comprehensive immigration reform, where we're asking them to push for releasing all the trans detainees in detention centers. What I can say, my own answer, if I could answer my own question, is that out here in Connecticut, in Middletown, Connecticut, the governor, Lamont, was actually considering, his staff was considering opening a family detention center in
Mhm.
Middletown, Connecticut. And folks were able to get together, create Zoom calls, start campaigns. And before those campaigns took off, the order was taken away and it was no longer allowed. And that was just applying a little bit of pressure. That just lets you show what a little bit of pressure does to end situations like getting ICE out of Connecticut or getting these detention centers not built up. And so, mi pregunta again is this: how can folks in their own ways, in their own states, in their own municipalities, in their own communities, connect with the End Trans Detention campaign and create their own form of gay pride and bring it back to the original legacy?
Yeah, I think it's important for us as a community to hold all of it, right? To hold all the pieces, the complexities. And in that, like the entrance attention campaign, it's not saying like you shouldn't celebrate who you are or you shouldn't take pride in your sexuality or your gender identity, right? No, we want all of our people to have some joy, to be able to be truly open about who they are, right? And to live their truths. But the entrance detention campaign, I think, is fundamental in connecting to the bigger criminalization of our people, right? So sometimes people might ask, why only trans people? Why not like my husband or my wife or my uncle or my cousin? Because when we uplift vulnerable populations and we have a win, in this case trans immigrant women, because of all the challenges that they faced back in their home countries, many don't have the family support, maybe are being kicked out of their homes, don't have any networks, right, of support by the state. So they're put on in harm's way. They're put on the streets to face violence and to being you know to be put in danger, including losing their lives. And the case that you gave of the leader in Guatemala who was murdered for challenging, the state and ended up losing her life. So I think when we as look at our communities and the population, and we do have the win and we do succeed, this is going to benefit the larger struggle, right? When we end trans detention, that could be a major push for the rest of the groups working on different campaigns, working on other issues that they're working on, that they can say like we can achieve the win, we can end trans detention, and we have been able to show that by facing right law enforcement in Santa Ana, by facing many people that were against shutting down the ICE detention center. So having that, win, it's huge in the steps in ending detention. So I think those connections are important to make. I think again the criminalization of our communities is something that we shouldn't tolerate, and I'm glad that that effort of opening the family detention center didn't happen, because as we challenge detention and trans detention specifically, we also are not okay with family detention or any detention at all of our communities, right? So people, do your, do your research, look into other issues that you care about, and connect. And I think the work that you're doing in Connecticut is it's also very important because there's different layers of or there's different entry points where people can get into like organizing, right? Like I know um, there's the major university, which is very academic there, and they also can help, right, by doing whatever research that they can do to have a stronger case and say that here's the evidence of why detention shouldn't happen in the first place for not just trans people, but for all people, right? So I think there's a lot of opportunities for people to plug in the work and learn about it, get involved, take action, and don't be complicit, right? Don't be complicit in the oppression. Don't be silenced when all these abuses are taking place. And something that mi compañera Isa Noyola mentions and highlights is like, we don't need to have another Victoria Arellano. We don't need to have another Roxana Hernandez or Joanna Medina that not only as a community we lost them, right? And when they should still be alive and fighting for their dreams, but
Yeah.
also their families. Some of them have families somewhere where they were loved by them, and now they don't have Roxana, they don't have Victoria, they don't have Joanna Medina, so they can't, the government cannot dictate what should be done, right? Like, we don't need improvements. We don't need to open a friendly LGBTQ detention center because that's never going to happen. There's no such thing as a friendly LGBTQ detention center. There's no such a thing as a friendly family detention center or safe place for people when you are being deprived of your basic rights as a human being, right? The lack of access to decent housing, food, and medical care, and all of that. So it's not about improving. It's not about making conditions better. It's about ending this abuse once and for all. So I think a good start for people is to go to the website to learn about the different groups that are part of this, effort to end trans detention, and how they can be part of it while they also celebrate, right, Pride Month, and at the same time, what issues are they personally connected to, they're passionate about, and if there's nothing out there for you, then start making your own, right? That you can start creating your own issue that speaks to you and that you learned from where we have been, not just in our history as a movement, but also other struggles, right? And you mentioned Black Lives Matter. You mentioned that has a major impact globally and how there were major action and protests across the across the world
Yeah.
against, the criminalization and dehumanization of Black people. So I think it's important for us to continue to rock the boat. I think it's important for us to not get comfortable and say, "Oh, we're good. We don't have anything more to do." No, on the contrary, the attacks are coming, and the attacks will continue to come as long as we have, people that want to see us, erased, people that want to see us murder because we don't comply to their standards. And that's, to me, it's totally unacceptable. And I'm just so grateful to be, in collaboration with, you and all the work that you're doing with other activists over there. And it's never late to come in, right, and learn and make a difference.
Absolutely. And It makes it a lot easier when when Familia creates the space for us to do it out here in our own way. But all this is to also say that action is so important to be able to understand what's possible. Y
Mhm,
entonces that's why the action that's going to be happening next week on the 23rd is important to mention. It's mentioned in the website, and I couldn't recommend going to the website anymore. It covers so much. It gives us language. It has a petition. It provides language. It provides calendar events.
mhm,
But tell us a little bit more about the event in Washington,
mhm,
because that's something that we're thinking of. We're leading a group that's also going down there. We're getting together with the New York crew, and then heading
mhm.
down there on the bus to be able to like take part in this action. But let us know a little bit more about what are the expectations about reaching Washington, and what are we asking these folks to do?
Yeah, the major rally that will take place next Wednesday, June 23rd in DC. It's sort of like bringing community, mostly from the East Coast, that have been doing work around the criminalization and ending detention for our people. So we have folks coming from New York City, we have people coming from Philadelphia, and you're bringing some folks from Connecticut. So part of that is it's important to do for us as a collective work, right? That Pride Month, usually when Obama was in office, they held like Pride receptions. So now that the Biden administration is in place, we don't know if they're gonna have a reception or not at the White House, but the rally that will take place is to put pressure, right, and to let them know, like if you have a celebration inside, we're still screaming to end these abuses, to not let any more people die while in custody. So the actions that have been happening over the last few weeks. So then we're like culminating with the one in DC on Wednesday, and also at the end of the month before closing Pride Month in Orange County in Santa Ana, where sort of this campaign was initiated in some way and became very visible. They're also going to do like a major rally that they're putting together. It's going to be very powerful, right? So then we have another city that just joined, and all those details will be in the website. But the DC, we're planning to have a major, rally to honor the lives of Victoria Arellano, Roxana Hernandez, and Joanna Medina. We were able to connect, our team was able to connect with the church, and we're going to do like because religion is so significant to many in our communities, right? So we also want to do as LGBTQ folks is like, we want to honor their lives. We want to have some sort of like, um, we won't forget you, right? And we want to um, honor your legacy, your lives, your humanity. So that was part of the idea to start at the church and then also start moving into the White House and get as much support as we can. And part of that rally is important, Max, is because the administration, the Biden administration, the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, who is now Secretary Mayorkas is in charge, and I obviously they know and they have a memo on their desk. What is it that entrance detention is asking them to do, right? And we have been able to talk to them in a meeting that happened a few months ago, and they were not really listening. They were not really committing to ending trans detention. So that's why these actions that started here in Phoenix on June 1st, the other actions that happened in New York City, in San Francisco, and today there's one in Houston. So all those actions are part of that. Like you don't want to commit to this demand, so we're mobilizing our people and putting pressure on you because you just can't have a celebration inside the White House this time because you are friendly to us, but at the same time there are people detained, suffering, right? So that I think that the rally in DC next week is going to be very important, and we are hoping that the Biden administration will commit to ending trans detention. Again, it's nothing new for them because he was the vice president when Obama was in office for 8 years, and they have been already receiving tons of information and evidence about what is going on in detention center, not just with the LGBT community, but with the family separation and all these other issues. So they already have a lot of documentation about what's happening, and they shouldn't be asking for more evidence. You know what I mean? Especially when we have three people that die in custody. And also, right before Obama left office, Mayorkas was the second highest person with DHS, and formerly detained trans woman met with him face to face at the DHS headquarters. That has never happened. DHS has never really met face to face with people that have been detained, especially at their headquarters in DC, right? So five trans immigrant women showed up and told them in his face, this is what they did to me, and this is the abuses that your guards were doing to us, and I blame you directly. And he listened. So now he is the secretary, right? Mayorkas, he is in charge of the DHS department. Again, he has been given information. The administration has this information. So that's why the rally is going to really um, be another reminder that we are not going to stay quiet, that we're not going to slow down, and we're going to escalate as much as we need to be able to achieve and trans attention.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Yes, I believe that President Biden, when he was vice president, he said that the 3 million, nearly 3 million that were deported under President Obama was a mistake. Right? He did
Mhm,
say it was a mistake. However, in the first 60 days, he deported more than 120,000.
mhm,
So the fight goes on, the struggle
mhm,
continues,
yeah,
and also to bring it full circle, you have your own history with President
mhm,
Obama having protested in his White House at the time,
mhm,
and it's comforting as heck knowing that we'll be able to have your back going back there
mhm,
to President Biden, expecting him to do the same years later. And so it encourages me to think that we didn't lose too much this last 4 years. Many people are talking about that we lost so much organization power in the last 4 years under Trump. Just look at how far we've come from you protesting President Obama to us now going together to Washington to protest President Biden now. So it just goes to show you when enough voices get together, we get loud enough, and they have to hear us. So I'm going to go ahead and close the convo. I appreciate you so much for taking part of this partnership. We've been trying to get something together with Familia and New Haven Pride Center in the worst way, and so I'm just so excited that we're able to do it this time, and I'm just so happy that into the future we'll be doing more things like this. And otra vez te quiero agradecer. And if you have any closing thoughts that you wanted to bring to us,
Yeah, no,
please.
thank you for having us, and thank you for reaching out, being open, being flexible, and being patient, right? Because there's a lot of pieces moving with this campaign, especially during Pride Month, and we want to be able that we build as much support as we can across the country, and appreciate you having me here, and any support that you need also from Familia at the local national level, please do let us know. I will be happy to support in any way that we can. So thank you for having me.
Ay, Muchísimas gracias. I appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Familia, Janisette, and the whole campaign. We appreciate you from New Haven Pride Center. As for the rest of you, we want to thank you again for joining our program. Remember that the center is here for you with year-round dynamic programming like this one, with support services and our case management program and more. You can learn more about what's going on at the Pride Center at newhavenpridecenter.org. And please don't forget to visit our social media platforms, the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, we're all there. Y también, por favor, visitan, do yourself a favor and visit the endtransdetention.org website. It covers so much information. It provides abilities for folks to be able, thank you so much, Patrick. It provides abilities for folks to understand how they can take part in what their role is, how they can take part in this campaign as well. So thank you so much to everyone for participating today, and we hope to see you soon. Hasta luego.